Alright, YouTube, it's time for a double update. Well, technically a triple update. First and foremost, I will not be making a Wisconsin live stream. I need to save my voice, I need to save my strength, and get to bed a little bit early. Because tomorrow I'm actually going on a bit of a trip. My partner is moving across the country here. There will be announcements to come, trust me, but for the next week, video making and so forth, maybe a little bit sporadic, but if there's anything major, it's still, obviously going to get covered, so no worries there. Wisconsin. I'm looking at the exit polling right now, and Trump fans should be cautiously celebrating based on the exit polling results. I'm going to go through this. This is actually on Lou Dobbs' Twitter. Because, who fucking else posts these infographics? He's a Trump fan, fairly obviously. Now, I don't particularly like Lou Dobbs. He sort of appears sort of like a Gingrich plantation owner, Southern Republican to me. Sort of like the dude who may have a robe hanging in his closet, but he's providing the infographics. That's the first place that I saw them as far as the exit polling goes, other than CNBC, which it fucking sucks. Their coverage just loops over and over, so it takes you a half an hour to get to it, and there's only like 50 minutes left as of right this moment left in Wisconsin until the polls close. We'll start getting some results. But I'm going to go through the exit polls really quick here. Like I said, just a short update. 40% of moderates in Wisconsin supporting Donald Trump, 29% for Ted Cruz. That is about normal, about what you would expect given the demographics within the state. That's about how Trump has performed among the moderates. So no biggie there. Nothing particularly big. It does, however, show those moderates that make up a large, substantial sum of the Republican voting base in a state like Wisconsin that could help him out in that state. Women, 48% of Republican women supporting Ted Cruz, 35% for Trump. That's actually not as bad as I would have figured. It's more than Kasich. I would have expected Kasich to be in the 30s and Trump to be in the teens, given sort of the comments that he's made. What this shows me is he's lagging behind in a demographic that's, let's face it, a fairly small demographic within the Republican core. As far as the far right females go, that would be Ted Cruz territory anyway. If anything, this might give credence to the Optimist poll that showed Trump had a slight advantage in the state. But I mean, clearly, Cruz is going to get more female voters. 53% of Wisconsin Republicans dissatisfied with the federal government, 32% angry. Now, anybody who's listing themselves as angry is almost automatically going to be going for Trump if they're voting in the Republican primary. Let's not kid ourselves. He's going to get a substantial proportion of those that are simply dissatisfied. Those that are enthusiastic or satisfied, I'm assuming they're going with John Kasich. 43% of independents are supporting Donald Trump, 38% for Cruz. This gives Trump an advantage among independent voters, which is roughly on par with what he has had. Now, like in Missouri. In the state of Missouri, both Cruz and Trump got a huge boost during the voting above what they had been polling at in the state of Missouri. Cruz got late deciders, and Trump got independents by about this margin. So while Cruz outperformed, Trump outperformed too. At the end of the night, he led by less than a point, ended up winning the state, which was major and game-changing. This was a state I had said where if Ted Cruz is going to win any of this shit, it's going to be the state of Missouri, and it's a 50-50 proposition. I couldn't have been closer to the mark because it was basically a 50-50 split between them for their respective voting blocks. 48% of Wisconsin Republicans want the next president to be a political outsider. Mostly Trump has a slight advantage with this. However, like I've said before, Ted Cruz, while not technically an outsider at all, has cast himself as one. His fans largely believe it. Therefore, it's sort of a non-issue when you really think of it. Here's the real kicker, though. And this is unexpected and bodes well for Trump. Now, I still say there's at best a slightly greater than 50% chance that Trump wins. It's an open primary. The independents and disenfranchised Democrats will pile onto the Trump train at large levels. So he has a slight systematic advantage in a state where my assumption is that polls showing a statistical dead heat are the most accurate. That's an assumption that I make based on my understanding of statistics. I don't have any proof of this. I could be wrong. Cruz could win by 15 points, just as easily as Trump could win by 15 points. Kasich could win still, statistically speaking. Late deciders. Late deciders up until, apparently, if you believe this exit poll anyway, up until now, late deciders have been heavily in favor of Ted Cruz. With the exception of Ohio, where they went, for their governor. They went for Kasich. They've been heavily in support of Cruz, very unfriendly towards Donald Trump. It's given Cruz several states. I believe the state of Oklahoma, that was largely why that happened there. Even in Iowa, you could say it played a role, and in Maine. Late deciders, 38 for Cruz, 36 for Trump. He has an advantage of only 2 points. That's not good news for Ted Cruz. If they are indeed, as I consider them most likely to be, roughly tied with Cruz or Trump, leading by very small single-digit sum, 1 or 2 points, this is going to destroy Cruz's capability of winning the state, because he needs at least as much of an advantage with late deciders as Trump has typically with independents. But the exit poll gives Trump a much larger advantage among independent voters. So I think at the end of the night, it is more likely Trump will win. Geraldo Rivera's predicted that. We're probably the only people who are, for the most part, that aren't actually Trump voters. I can't imagine Geraldo's riding the Trump train any more than I am, because I support the Libertarian Party. But I do think it is slightly more likely he will carry the state than that Cruz does, and I think it's more likely that Cruz would win than Kasich. However, there is still an outside chance, based on, again, that optimist poll that I put more credence in. I put more stock in the optimist poll due to its sample size. Its sample size was larger than all other polls combined so far in the state. In fact, I believe on either side, all combined together. The ARG poll that just came out showed Trump 10 points ahead. I'm going to assume that also is an outlier, like polls from a week ago showing Cruz 10 points ahead. I could be, again, wrong. Trump could be surging in Wisconsin for all I know. I don't think so, though. I think that at the end of the night, Trump will win by a small margin. And why this is a victory for him isn't because of delegates. The first place victor isn't going to get it's only 42 delegates total anyway, for one thing. It's not a particularly large chunk. Secondly, it's only winner take all. If someone hits 50, nobody's going to hit 50. So the winner is only going to get maybe a dozen or so more delegates than the second place candidate. So delegate-wise, really, it's helpful to Trump, but at the end of the night, it's not particularly helpful, except for shoving Cruz, further under. Why it's helpful is psychological, because the media, after Trump's abortion comments, declared his campaign dying. If he then goes on to win Wisconsin anyway, there's really no hope for Ted Cruz. If Ted Cruz loses Wisconsin, his campaign is effectively over. Because once he loses New York, which he will, and gets almost no delegates there, he'll probably come in third place. He will be very, very close, I spoke about this days ago, to losing the roughly 140 more delegates that he can lose before he falls below the threshold of capability to hit 1237. Once he falls below that level, if not on the night of New York, then on the 26th with the next 5 races, it would be certain by that point. It's basically certain now, even if he wins 100% of the fucking votes in Wisconsin. When he falls below that threshold, which he will, it will get to the point where most of the people kind of supporting Ted Cruz will say, well, it's basically over. There's only one candidate actually capable of getting on the first ballot. There's only one candidate that's actually capable of scraping together enough delegates. Cruz should sit by the sidelines. This is fundamentally over. Trump will go into the convention with the most delegates, with the highest proportion of the vote, with the most states and so forth. And he will have a massive advantage in delegates, and at the end of the night, they'd be stupid not to nominate him. That's what they'll begin saying. At that point, all of the electability Republicans that jumped aboard the Cruz missile, and I expect this to be at most maybe 5 points of his support. Most of them are more religious voters, or they're ideological. They're very far right on certain issues like, gay marriage, abortion, guns, whatever. The electability Republicans, which is a small proportion, but fled to him from people like Jeb and Rubio over time, will abandon him because they're much more scared of a brokered convention than they are of Donald Trump. At the end of the night, They'll be saying, well, Ted Cruz can't actually get to the threshold. He's going to, at best, finish a distant second behind Trump. Why support him? There's no point anymore to supporting him. And so Trump will sweep up all the delegates in California, which is almost 200 delegates. That puts him up to 1,000 after the total tonight will be around 800 if he wins, or very close to it. After New York, it'll be about 850, 860, thereabouts. That would put him over 1,000, and then there are a whole slew of other states. In almost all of them, he's leading, except for states like Nebraska or Montana that are flyover states. At the end of the night, I expect Donald Trump has a slight advantage in Wisconsin, but the key term here is slight. I'm not making a prediction that he will win because the polling, the reliable polling, is too close for me to actually say who is going to win. A lot of people are saying they expect Cruz to win by double digits, or they expect Trump to win by 10 because of the ARG poll. It's just not sensible to make that sort of prediction when the numbers are that close. But you should be, if you support Trump, I would be cautiously optimistic based on the exit polling. It shows that perhaps late deciders in the last day or so have decided Trump ultimately is their man at higher levels than they have in previous races. That blunts Ted Cruz's momentum. It may be just what the doctor ordered for the Trump train to ride through Wisconsin. That's about all. Peace out.